Yeah, man, we have some absolutely crazy legendaries in today's video. First of which is Alexstrasza, Guardian of Life, a 7 mana 8/8 dragon. Yet another cool new Alexstrasza here. Battle cry: set your remaining health to 15, and when you reach full health, deal 15 damage to your opponent. I love that this design harkens back to the OG Alexstrasza in a really cool way, where it kind of sets you to 15 and sets your opponent to 15 in theory if they start from 30 and take 15, which is a fun idea. But this is sort of a win condition for a healing based priest, which is really nice. Like normally, you just kind of hope to heal up and live forever and outlast your opponent and win via attrition or whatever, and sometimes that works. But with this card, you can actually flip things around a little bit, and while you're also stabilizing yourself, you're also putting the opponent in a danger zone, particularly in combination with some of that like shadow priest stuff we talked about, where you're turning your healing into damage. Setting them down to 15 could put you in range for some of those Ruby Sanctum plays where now you're hero powering for like 8 because of like Gin Greymane and a couple of those heal increases or whatever, and you're dealing 8 and 5 and 3 or whatever, and like boom, the opponent now dies because you were able to put them in some danger zone thresholds off of your Alexstrasza. Now, of course, it's not always that simple because there is some inherent risk potentially baked into this card. Not only is there some risk in just playing a 7 mana 8/8, like that is definitely a bit of a downturn, but also setting yourself to 15. If you're a deck that's already running a lot of life gain and healing, that is often going to be debuffing your health. You might go from like 24 down to 15, and it's going to be hard sometimes to find a little window where you can just spend 7 and not die from 15 against a lot of decks. Like if they have a couple things on board, it's like, man, I can't really play my Alexstrasza while they got stuff on board. If I'm at 15, they might have 8 damage in hand and a few things on board, and it's like, boom, I'm dead because I was trying to weave in this Alexstrasza. So threading the needle from a timing standpoint could be tough. Now, of course, on the other side of things, this can be a heal. There's scenarios where like they pushed me down to 2, I've started to stabilize, and this is going to heal me back up and keep me alive. I think that felt like a more reasonable play perhaps in the old days of Hearthstone. Nowadays, I don't know, like damage happens to be so chunky and like decisive sometimes that like I don't know how often you're gonna be getting where this feels like a meaty heal. How often do you get down into single digits and this pops you back up safely? But it can happen. I don't want to write that off. Like it can increase your health too, which might be the moment you try to squeeze this card in. You also, of course, can just wait. If you, like we said, if you have an 8 power hero power, get to 9 mana, or I guess 8 mana with Gin Greymane specifically, play Alexstrasza, heal yourself for 8. You're back at 23. That certainly feels like a safer spot to be, I think, in many cases. We're also going to see a really cheap removal spell here too, Medivh's Triumph, that is basically going to be a 1-cost AoE where you might be able to like play Alexstrasza and then clear a board for 8 mana. That could also help you feel a little more stable behind your Alexstrasza alongside any other maybe cheap healing or whatever that comes in alongside that. So a couple questions for this, right? Like, when do you play it and can you stay alive? And then also, how impactful is this damage actually going to be? Because you could see some scenarios too where that 15 damage to the opponent doesn't put you in lethal range. It doesn't create those thresholds or breakpoints for you. And then you've kind of spent 7 mana to sort of do nothing if you think about it, right? Like, because if it doesn't, in the game, if the opponent's able to stabilize and all that, after you do all of this to get yourself back to full, you kind of spend a 7 mana 8/8 and you got nowhere. And in fact, you kind of hurt yourself perhaps because you maybe lowered your health. Sometimes it might be an increase, but I think often it'll be lowering your health for an upside that's never realized. And that's it's going to be hard sometimes to tank that sort of line in the deck. So you're going to have to make sure you can actually convert this to lethality. But also, like a lot of decks get above 30 nowadays too. So even dealing 15, they might have another extra 20 armor. You might not even get to their base health total. So how much does that 15 really contribute? Again, could see some games where this is basically ineffectual and it's just a 7 mana 8/8. It's like a war golem or whatever, basically a little bigger. And it just didn't really do anything for you the entire course of a game, which that's scary. There are also, of course, ways to like double this battle cry, which should do extra damage based on the wording, because like the trigger is hit once, but the effect could still go off twice, right? So if you like hit this off a Xavius or have a Dios play or something, in theory, that could be a way to deal 30 right off the bat. That could be an angle, but again, just more expensive, more work, and it's suddenly a combo that's just taking a lot of pieces and a lot of time. That makes me nervous too. So in essence, I wonder if this play is like definitive enough or decisive enough, if that makes sense, where I think the balance between weaving this in and its impact might not be as good as you want it to be on average. I think there could be some gaps there where it's just really hard to find either the moment to play this card or even maybe the excuse to put it in your deck. Now, this card, on the other hand, I think can go in a lot of decks. This is Medivh's Triumph, 5-mana holy spell. Deal 4 damage to all minions, and it costs 1 if you control a legendary card. Now, importantly, I want you to note the wording there. It says card, not minion. So, for instance, something like the quest in Priest, I believe you'll be controlling the quest, which will mean this is a 1-mana, 4 damage AoE in Quest Priest, which is just totally insanely good. And also, of course, a holy spell, so it's still hitting your quest. That alone might actually make Quest Priest a legit really good deck post rotation, because again, like the available deck pool is going to go down. Quest Priest will have a lot of stuff, and this could be an absolute powerhouse card against aggro decks for a Quest Priest, giving them tons of time to do their thing. So that alone makes this card nuts. You've also, of course, got weapons too. If you have a legendary weapon, there's like Medivh weapon, for instance, could be another way to discount this, or of course any just like little cheap legendary minion, or any stage of a game, even if it's not cheap, an Elise on 4 that sticks around sometimes, or on like turn 6 or whatever, play a random Elise, turn 5 play an Elise if it's late, and you still get a 1-mana 4 damage AoE. Like, yeah, you hurt your Elise or whatever, sure, or whatever your legendary is, but in many cases that will still just be fine, because you get a cool battle cry, you get a cool effect, discover a card, do something, and wipe out your opponent's board simultaneously for 1 mana. That's gonna feel like a fantastic play off of legendary minions. We already talked about the Alex Strauss examples, kind of a fine one already. So even 7-cost cards kind of feel good when Medivh Triumph later in the game. So on top of that, I think sometimes you'll spend 5 on this and be happy. I don't even think you have to discount it necessarily. There will be scenarios where it's turn 5 and this is a great board clear and you just rip it and you're not mad at all. Old school Flame Strike was dealing 4 damage for 7. And of course, this hits your own stuff, so it has some symmetry downside, but in a control priest, that's rarely going to be a negative impact at all. So yeah, I mean, I think the ceiling on this is insane, and I think the floor is actually still a pretty solid card. So Medivh's Triumph looks, I think, quite good, and could be such a home run in Quest Priest that becomes a really good deck right away. All right, so next up is one of the craziest cards we've ever seen in Hearthstone, I think. I actually love these cards that just like give you a ridiculously big number and say, go do something cool. This is Viranoth, a 6-mana 6/6 elemental. Battle cry if the total cost of your starting minions, so that's in your deck, was 100, split 100 stats among minions in your deck. So there's a condition here. Your deck has to be full of things that cost 100 exactly. Not like at least 100, but exactly 100. Apparently, there's going to be a little counter tooltip thing that does help you out there, which is nice. Which, by the way, 100 is big. I want to be clear, like that's really, really big. Because if you have 20 minions in your deck, which is probably a pretty average balance between spells and minions, right? Like 20 minions and 10 spells, so all have to cost an average of 5. Which is a pretty high average, actually. Like most decks are running a lot of 1s and 2s and 3s and stuff. It's hard to counterbalance that with enough big guys to keep that average around 5. But if you're running like 30 minions, of course, it gets a lot easier, but most decks just don't want to do that. Also, with the buff here for Viranoth on the other side of things, right? The way this works is it's going to split the stats as evenly as it can, it sounds like. So in other words, if you had 1 minion in your deck left at the time you played Viranoth, it would actually give it 50-50 in stats exactly. Or if you had 2 minions left in your deck, it would give each of them 25 and 25. Or if you had 10 minions left in your deck, I guess it would give each of them 5 and 5, right? So it's going to try to like split it as perfectly as it can. So, you know, if you want like a crazy big buff, you want your deck to be as small as possible. So there could be some cheese with like isolating down a final card in your deck that has charge or something and giving it 50-50. Some really silly plays are possible. More realistically, this is probably kind of like a big Keleseth where you've still got 10 or 12 things left in your deck when you play this, and each of those are getting like 4/4 and buffs or something, right? So you're getting just like a really nice big time deck buff across lots of different things. So a lot to break out here about how like impactful this is going to be. Number one is I do think this is going to be pretty tough to build a good deck with this card, just because I think the curve demands and like minion versus spell demands are going to push you up a little bit in curve more than you might be comfortable with. You know, there have been some like high cost cards that would make this a lot easier, like giants in particular, right? Like run 2 of these and you're halfway there, and then you have a lot more flexibility or whatever to build your deck. But these specifically are rotating, right? These are from Whizbang's Workshop. That's out. So you won't have Playhouse Giants. So like other high cost cards right now, there's not a lot to work with, right? Again, it's just like 10 drops, and you don't want to be running a ton of 10 drops in your deck. I think that's a rough spot to be in. So like, I do think deck construction is going to be an issue, but then there's also that side of it where it's like, not only am I constructing a deck with all this stuff, but I have to make this payoff worth it. And I think that side's going to be even tougher because we've had like big deck buff cards before. I'm thinking of like Lorthamar, the guy that like doubled all the stats in your deck or whatever. You know, he was like 7 mana, so pretty much in the same range here. This is a little cheaper, thank God. And that was like doubling, and sometimes that would be even bigger stats, particularly like big stuff, you know, like of course there's math here, but you get the idea. On average, I would say it was probably bigger and didn't have all the like restrictions and stuff. So like sometimes I look at this and I think, hey, this is kind of a worse Lorthamar that's making me compromise the integrity of my deck in a bigger way. You know, there is some differences in that, like, you know, the later you play this, the more isolated the buffs get, which, you know, that could be really impactful. Like we said, if you have only a charge minion in your deck, like, yeah, you're going to get 50-50 to your charge minion. So like, can you build a deck that like draws through the whole deck super fast and isolates a thing? We even have that card that shuffles stuff back into your deck we saw. Is there some cheesy combo there? Yeah, sure. I think it can exist. Is it going to be good? I don't see how, because you've still got to run enough minions, right? It's all back to that deck construction problem where it's like, how do you have enough card draw? How does the deck survive and play into a real meta when trying to do that? So like, what I'm getting at is I think this card is super sick, and I think it's really cool, and I think it's going to have some very fun puzzles, and I think I love stuff like this with just the big crazy numbers. I love stuff like this with the deck building challenge aspects. Elise has been too good, but I think it was a really cool same sort of idea of a deck and card. That said, I don't actually think this is going to be very good. I think it has some meme potential, but I think the average results on this are just going to be too hard to pay off. And like, to get it working the way you want, it's just going to be too much of a compromise. So I just don't see it. I think it's going to be, unfortunately, meme status, but it's still a really cool card. I'm not shaming it for that. I'm glad it exists. I'm going to have a lot of fun with this one, I think, but just tough to be competitive, perhaps. So next up here is Gelbin's Triumph. This is a nice little 1 mana spell for Paladin. There's gonna be some more like Triumph cards where you saw that Medivh's one. This one, you get a random Paladin aura, and it lasts an additional turn, which I actually think this is kind of okay. It's nothing flashy, it's nothing super exciting, but I do think Aura Paladin's going to be positioned well post-rotation because it got a lot of support recently, which means it's still going to have a pretty high density of stuff to build a deck into, which is a good sign post-rotation. So having the big Gelbin and all that, right? Like having an extra aura, just more of that aura support. Some of the auras, you know, might be a little slower than you'd like because they just like, you know, this card doesn't maybe pay off until turn 6 or whatever. And then sometimes, you know, the extra hit on it, the extra turn or whatever might take like 3 or 4 turns to realize itself, right? So that is a bit of a downside for sure. But when we look at the aura pool, like, you know, there's still good relevant cards in here for sure. You know, you hit an acceleration aura off this and it's like, boom, this is like the best card in your deck suddenly because you're getting an awesome 2-drop, right? Some of these are going to be rotating, right? But I think there's enough here. Like even a chronological aura is probably still, you know, a nice little card. I think this would be nuts if it said it costs 1 less. That would actually make this card insane, but I think it's solid still as it is. You know, I think you'll just need density of stuff that synergizes, and this will slot in as an okay card near the bottom of your deck. Moving on to Hunter, this is Sylvanas' Triumph, a 2-mana spell. It deals 3 damage, and if you've played another copy of this, hit all enemies instead of only 1, which is cool. You know, this is harkening to the Sylvanas Fabled card, of course, here playing multiples. But, you know, solid little deal, 3 for 2. One of the most classic recipes Hearthstone has ever had, back to Frostbolt and beyond. I think that's going to be fine for some aggressive Hunter decks. Sometimes it's fine to use it against a minion if you need to, but just having some reach is good. And when this turns into an AoE, as soon as you find the second one, that is an A+ card, right? That is just nuts. It's a board clear and face damage all in one, which is really, really perfect. So, you know, there could be some decisions about keeping this in the mulligan, stuff that draws spells. Some extra synergies there could push this to that next level faster. I do wonder if there will be like pressure to keep this in mulligans, which hurts because it's not really a card you need in mulligans all that much. Like, you know, there's probably some nuance to playing it well, but I think in essence, it's fine enough on its own. Like, it's a solid card on its own, and then some games it's going to turn into a nuts card as soon as you play the second one. So, like, hey, I can definitely put that in decks, right? If I know I'm gonna have this like game-winning high roll sometimes, just because it wipes out my opponent's early board or whatever, that's 100% going to be worth it. So I think this card looks good. Moving on to Syndragosa's Triumph here for Mage, 5 mana arcane spell. This one deals 8 damage to a minion, and then it will reduce the cost of a random card in your hand by the excess damage. So, you know, cool little cost discount potential here. You know, maybe cheat out a really big thing in hand. Do you have some questions around like targeting of that? Is it smart about it? In other words, you know, if it's 7 extra, will this always pick something that's 7 or more, or would it still sometimes hit the coin in your hand? You probably shouldn't keep the coin, but you get the idea. And totally waste its discount. I feel like it might be able to waste the discount. I think we've had some discount stuff before, like avoid 0 cost things, so it's not never smart, but I don't know if it's this smart. That could make this card a little better. But even if it does, I still think there are some challenges here where like you just don't want to spend 5 mana to remove a small thing to realize that upside, unless you really reliably know you can kind of play that next card immediately and it's like really swingy and good. It's going to be hard sometimes, even, you know, like hitting a 5 health thing with this. It's like, okay, I spent 5 to remove a 5 drop and I got a 3 cost discount. So it's kind of like I spent 2 mana, deal 5. I mean, numerically that sounds good, but like, what did I hit? Is it something I'm playing now? Have I given up too much tempo in the meantime? It's just all kind of iffy. It's all iffy just because, you know, the random card in hand is tough. If this always targeted like the highest cost card in hand, you'd be like, yes, that's a home run. That's going to be insane. I'll totally take that risk. I can build a deck around that. As it stands right now, how many high cost things do you have in hand? What are you hitting? How much can you sacrifice to do that? A lot of questions that I think are just tough ones to answer. There are some arcane synergies to consider as well here that might be neat though. And, you know, we did see like the Fabled package in Mage last set, which could really benefit from some discounts. So I don't want to write this one off. I think there could be some sneaky decks built that are consistent enough with it that it feels good. You also can hit your own stuff for the record, which is kind of a nice outlet in case the opponent doesn't have anything. You might be able to construct some plays around that too, where you just have like, you know, 1 health cards on board or whatever. So there's some stuff to work with here. I think it's possible this gets there. I just don't think it's going to be good all that often. Moving on to Druid here, we have Ashara's Triumph. This is a 1 mana arcane spell. It shuffles 5 random minions into your deck that cost 8 or more, and then you double their stats. So kind of playing into some more of this doubled stat stuff from like the Ashara Fabled location. You could have some monster stats with the location and this like doubling stats like crazy. I think the question is just like polluting your deck with a bunch of 8 drops, even when their stats are doubled. Isn't that too inconsistent? Like, isn't that too unreliable to be good? I think so, right? It's going to be really hard because, yeah, if you knew they were all going to have like taunt or rush or something, you'd probably be like, yeah, okay, I can do that. But when you look at 8 drop, they don't all have taunt or rush. Some of them are bad. And frankly, some of them, even with doubled stats, still aren't great because, like, you know, they start small because they have a battle cry or whatever. And, you know, you don't get much out of this. You kind of just got a random 8 drop in your deck with like an extra 3/3 or something. That's not going to be the thing you're trying to hit, right? So I don't know. I'm like, you know, I like the idea of this card so much. I want this to be good. If I knew I was always hitting Atlasaurus, I'd be like, yes. If I knew I was always hitting Asphyxiodon, yes, right? Even Alec here, yes, maybe. If they were all taunts. I also don't know if Colossals can be in the pool or not, actually, because Colossals can't be randomly summoned on board, I think was the old rule. I think they might be able to randomly generate it in hand or deck, though. So you might get some Colossals, too, which some of them without being heralded aren't actually that good, right? Like the baseline's maybe not that good. But then, you know, there's always the stuff. This is rotating, I think. But, you know, you just hit a Califero and you're like, yeah, that kind of sucks. I was thinking of the rewind guy, Mr. Clocksworth. It's like, yeah. Mr. Clocksworth's not like a bad card, but you don't want to just shuffle a 6/6 Mr. Clocksworth into your deck, right? That's the issue, is like consistency is just, You got to draw all of these. There are some ways to find stuff at like the bottom of your deck, etc. We've got that whole package too. But I think this is more meme status and fun status. This is a Regis card for sure. Probably not a good card, though. This, on the other hand, I think could be a good card. This is Wildwood Circle for Druid, a 3-mana nature spell. This is their Shatter cards. They're not all 4 cost. I feel like they've all been 4 so far. Is that true? I think everyone we've seen so far has been 4. There's some other stuff that like generates Shatter and stuff, but yeah. Anyway, this one is summon 2 2/2 Treants. And then also give your minions Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 Treant. So when this enters the hand, it's going to split in 2. You're going to have a 3-mana card that says summon 2 2/2 Treants and a 3-mana card that says Death Rattle, summon a 2/2. Give your minions Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 Treant. This is probably the card we've seen so far from Shatter that is the best when split. I think particularly that right half, giving them the Soul of the Forest effect. I think there will be instances you're pretty happy to play that for 3 mana. I think it's going to happen where you just get an early board or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I just need to stabilize this board right now in my Token Druid deck. I am not even going to wait for these to shatter. I'm just going to play the right half, and I think it's fine. I think probably the solid 3-star card when split, and then if it does connect together, of course, this is a really good follow-up where you get to summon both 2 extra minions and still give the Death Rattle, and hopefully a couple other things that are also on board because of who knows what, you know, an Elise location or just some Death Rattles left behind, or you have enough mana to just play it all, I guess. And then you have a really, really solid board development with maybe 4 or 5 things getting that Death Rattle, including the 2 guys you get off this. So really, really solid when shattered, and I think good-ish too when split, like, you know, enough that it's playable, which gives me hope. Also, I think, you know, if you got tree and stuff, you got a tree and druid deck, a token druid deck, you just got to run this, right? It's just going to make sense in that package. So probably the best Shatter card we've seen so far. And that actually wraps it up for our video. So now let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Alexstrasza, Guardian of Life, is a 3-star card. Medivh's Triumph is a 4-star card. Viranoth is a 2-star card. Gelbin's Triumph is a 3-star card. Sylvanas' Triumph is a 4-star card. Syndragos's Triumph is a 3-star card. Ashara's Triumph is a 2-star card. Wildwood Circle is a 4-star card. Yeah, I think a couple playable things here. Some definitely fun legendaries. I just worry if they're quite good enough. I think some of you will like these more than me. I might be a little lower on these two than I think the player base consensus so far. I hope I'm wrong. I want them to be cool and good. Viranoth particularly would be a super fun card to be good. I just think it's going to be a very difficult puzzle to solve to make it worth it. Most decks, you know, just valuing stats after turn 6 in particular, stats tend to have a lower and lower impact as the game goes on. So how will it work? I don't know, but we'll see. We'll try it for sure. It looks crazy fun. So all in all, you know, enjoy. Let me know what you think about these cards. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I thank you so much for watching. And until next time, game on.